Welcome to a platform where we debate on the top stories of the NBA, NFL, Major League Baseball, and other leagues with the best in the world of sports. You'll also get interviews with many athletes and media talents at several basketball events, including the WNBA and college basketball. My name is Rafiq Lewison, and this is Nothing But That Sports Talk. Oh yeah, welcome back to another episode of Nothing But That Sports Talk. I'm Rafiq Lewison alongside Sabrina, who has literally started her own business campaign. And for what I see, you're actually a professor at NYU, but she also went to my alma mater as well. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Rafiq. Thanks for having me. It's always really nice to have a conversation about, what's been going on in my life around me, and especially with someone who's from New York. So thanks for having me.
Listen, I'm currently going to school in Queens, a certain school that I told you that I was going to off the air, and it's good school located at Utopia Parkway. So, yeah, get him a PhD. So I can so I don't know how familiar you are with Utopia Parkway. For somebody going to Queens all the time, Utopia Parkway and Kew Gardens area. So yeah.
Very familiar, too familiar. I wish I didn't never had to be on that road again, but I wish you the best of luck.
Hey, not bad to me so far. But anyways, back to the story. Let's just get a little bit about your backstory prior to starting your business.
Sure. So, again, born and raised Queens, New York. I have, very little experience working in business, being around business people. My father was a truck driver. My mother didn't work really. And so, getting my start in business, I was feeling around, trying to figure out what it is that I can do that's going to resonate with me, that I could do really well and be successful. So I tried a few different things. Honestly, my career was all over the place, probably in the first like 5 years of graduating from undergraduate. I worked as an accountant, I worked as an analyst, I worked as a marketing person, and then eventually I landed in public relations and in PR. That's where I really felt like, talking to people, being out there doing events and talking to media and developing stories. Those are the things that really resonated with me. And so then I got started in, I figured out what it is that I could do. Then I need to figure out where it is I should do it. So I worked in technology for 10 years, working with some of the biggest brands in tech, and Google and YouTube, for example. And that experience slowly had me working with a number of online advertising companies. Being in New York, there's a lot of advertising and online advertising companies. And I just started my own business. I launched with one or two online advertising companies. And that work then led me to sports. And I've been working in sports for over a decade now, most notably representing a lot of international European football clubs and leagues, Bayern Munich, Barcelona, La Liga, Serie A. But I also have done a number of things in the NBA and the basketball space. So I supported Chris Brickley on a number of his big campaigns. And then also I've been supporting the program, and I'm on an investor in the program, New York City, for the last several years. So getting a number of different experiences here, and all of these, the NBA opportunities and the International Football Club opportunities, opened me up to collaborations with the NFL and the MLB and the NHL and multiple different brands and sponsors. So it's been a really exciting journey so far.
Yeah, pretty exciting journey. I see you out there in the field a lot. I mean, you're doing everything from building partnerships to public relations. And I see that you and Gabby started your business together that got a lot of people, including your friend, a certain content creator named Arden Franklin, coming to your events. After seeing the footage of that, I was like, yeah, you are an inspiration.
Thank you so much. So I have been teaching at NYU the past 5 years. And in my work at NYU, I was invited to speak at this women's collective event. And at the event, there were, 80 plus people there, many of them young female professionals. Many of them had emailed me or come up to me at the end of the event and said, "Hey, how can I find your confidence so that I can be successful in business?" And after, hearing that over and over again, and I just started saying, it's competence. It's not confidence. It's competence. It's not confidence. I said that so many times to the 20 plus women who reached out to me that I was like, I really need to set the record straight here. How do I create a movement similar to the movement that was created by Everyone Watches Women's Sports? And obviously the t-shirt was a really great way for people to support the initiative, to show their support in a very physical way, to create an online movement as well, leveraging the t-shirt and the message that the t-shirt had created. And so so I figured, why don't I do that as well and use the t-shirt as a really great way to get the movement out there into the right people's hands. I brought on my partner, Gabby Garb. She and I worked together at FC Barcelona's New York office. She's an incredible designer and artist. She brought the t-shirt to life. She's bringing the Shopify site and the Instagram to life using her, her talents and her skills. Recently, we had this pre-launch celebration at Mr. Purple in New York City. As you said, Arden was there. We had a number of media there from Fortune Magazine and Gold.com and Sports Illustrated and Arden, of course. And importantly, over 20 NYU students were there supporting the initiative, both men and women. And I have a lot of men supporting this campaign, as you are as well with this story. And it's really just about helping young women who need to know more, I think, than young men, because young men are kind of born with this competence and confidence kind of, mixed together, where if there are 10 things on a job description and you as a male can only check 3 or 4 or 5 of those boxes, you feel competent and confident enough to go after that opportunity. Women suffer with this thing called imposter syndrome. And not only do they need to check all 10 boxes, but they also maybe need 2 or 3 extra boxes that are not even listed for them to feel the confidence and the competence enough to go after it. So this movement, while many of my male counterparts are supporting it, it's really intended to help young females who may suffer with this imposter syndrome to know the more education and skills and experience and knowledge that you build, the more competence you will have. And that competence then leads to confidence in being able to be seen and respected as a leader in your respective field. So thank you for asking about that campaign. This is just the first year. We're only just getting started. We expect to expand and build on this in future years.
Exactly. And that only happens if you continue to do the outreach that you're doing right now. I mean, when you outreach one person, it can lead to a lot of other people that want to get invested into the business that you're trying to build.
Exactly. Well, being in the public relations business for the last 20 years, I have seen firsthand, and I've realized now, all of these years later, how important it is to keep good people around you and to maintain good relationships. The outreach that you talk about, it started all just with my inner circle. Who are the people that I know around me that I could first showcase as competent women? And then who are the people around me who could benefit from that? And again, it was just all people that have been in my network, have been around me, have been supporters. I've supported them. And so the outreach is really about maintaining really great network in a really, really, in an authentic way. So obviously these people who have been around me for the last 20 years, I didn't keep them around because someday I might need them for this campaign, right? It's like, I actually genuinely care about these people. I support these people. And when then it came my turn where I needed their support, they were there for me. And that's a really valuable lesson for people coming up in the industry.
Yes, it's a very good lesson. And the fact, and you just talking about everybody watching women in sports. I mean, you kind of already know now long before the Everybody Watch Women in Sports campaign actually started. When like whether it's like during the beginning of the WNBA or during the glory days of UConn with Diana Taurasi and Sue Bird, to the glory days after the glory days of Breanna Stewart, to now the way women's college basketball is right now, with up and coming stars that we don't even know about that are showing now. They pick up to what the older generation left off. And that builds
Exactly.
a lot of strong viewership and engagement for us Black men to get more invested into it and cover it the way we cover college basketball on the men's side.
Absolutely. So I think, the way that audiences are responding to women's sports in general over the last 2 years has been really mind-blowing because again, working for FC Barcelona for over a decade, a big part of the work that I did for them was to help promote their women's team. And in those early days, it was almost impossible to get any media to cover or be interested in women's sports in general. And so I've seen just an unbelievable trajectory up of media being interested, of fans being interested. In a way, it's a movement, but we've now moved beyond the fact that it's a social movement, and people are interested in women's sports, and we're seeing that at the college level, at the professional level. We're seeing it with brands in terms of their investment, with media companies in terms of their investment in media rights, and it really all started with, I think, everyone watches sports movement. And then getting all the numbers out there about the viewership online, the engagement on social media, the merchandising sales, the ticket sales. And all of that on, in the female, in the women's basketball space started at the college level. Now, I know that there's been a big controversy around Caitlin Clark and, her role in, sparking this interest in college basketball and women's basketball. But the reality is she was a college basketball player. And for me personally, and I'm sure I know a lot of other people started watching college basketball when you started hearing all the buzz around this young woman who is, just crazy out there on the basketball court, like making all of these hoops, and you're really driving a lot of interest. And then obviously as she got into the WNBA, that interest and that following, came over to there. But the WNBA had been getting a lot of numbers as well and had been driving a lot of interest. So that's why you see other leagues like Unrivaled coming up in the space, because they see it's a big business opportunity. It's an opportunity to create, some competition. And as a businesswoman at heart and an entrepreneur, I always feel like competition is a good thing. So when you see new leagues getting started, new women's, basketball league with Unrivaled, or, other, I see the NFL focusing on women's flag football and investing in women's football in that regard. In international European football, soccer, you see a lot of leagues and clubs investing in developing their women's teams. So all around us, you see that growth and progress. It's really exciting.
And don't forget about the Shark brand that collaborated with the Women's Champions Classic last December, that spark engagement. I'm looking at all these fans around us willing to attend this college basketball game, like one of the first women's college basketball game of this kind, to have UConn, Louisville, Tennessee, and Iowa playing at the Barclays Center. It got me thinking, man, am I in the WNBA finals or am I in the women's Final Four? Because
Exactly.
some of the fan engagement that I witnessed.
Well, even with the NBA All-Star game, the NBA All-Star game has been struggling for viewership, right? I mean, that's well documented.
Yeah, because it's not that much defense now these days. I mean, you have all the star power, but the defense is just so passive.
Exactly. But what, the point where I was going this around, women's sports is the most exciting thing of the NBA All-Star, last season was Sabrina against Steph in that shootout, right? Like people want to see that. People want to see more integration. People want there to be these exciting matchups, things that are unexpected. And obviously supporting women's sports and supporting women's athletes is a big part of, I think, why that, that content did so well. And it's a lesson for all of us who work in the sports industry and develop storytelling and content. How can we keep, redefining, women's sports and not making it about that this is women's sports and this is men's sports, but how about we just like kind of mix it up and say, this is basketball, right? And it's like, we don't need to define it as women's basketball and men's basketball, but like, this is basketball and like, let's do some things together so that, there isn't competition amongst, but more about working together to create a bigger piece of pie. And I think you see that with a lot of the numbers that come out around these cross collaborations.
Yeah, exactly. And you're talking about cross collaborations. How about Serena Williams, a retired tennis player, being one of like the owners of the up and coming Toronto Temple franchise is going to come in a few years. Or Sabrina Ionescu, a WNBA champion, recently collaborated with a soccer team. And you mentioned that you don't work for FC Barcelona, a soccer team, or as they called it, football, FUT, not FOOT. But yeah, you mentioned
Exactly.
that. Oh, and also Gabby Thomas, a track and field star, an Olympian, do some work with around many different campaigns and brands, promoting herself. Those are the type of things that we need to look for as far as cross collaborations.
The cross collaborations I have found to be the most powerful in terms of storytelling for fans, because we live in a world today where young fans and more diverse fans they're not following the games as closely in terms of, the old school way of how people became fans and showed their loyalty to their sports teams. Young and diverse fans today, they care more about like this lifestyle experience. And as much as you can curate that for them by bringing in different elements and making it really interesting, we all have short attention spans now with social media. Everything is global with social media. And so the more that you can create these cross collaborations that bring like-minded or lifestyle elements together, whether that's, European football players and their fashions and their sneakers to NBA players and their fashion and their sneakers, and they connect on that. Or maybe it's about music, or maybe it's about, let's see these soccer stars try to get a bucket while, the NBA stars try to get a goal in net. And those things are compelling for young fans because, again, they're not really following the matches and the games so closely. They're not watching full-length games. They're more about the exciting entertainment content, the lifestyle content that you can create and curate for them, which is why the cross collaboration has become so powerful for fans today.
Yeah, exactly. And not to mention, you talking about like earlier with the Unrivaled League. The Unrivaled League is really people. It's to the point where people are throwing watch parties. These people will to actually you fly down to Miami to check out Unrivaled, and then the same people that have been involved with women's sports for a while, they're hosting or do play-by-play at Unrivaled. I mean, you would think it's a 5-on-5, but it's really a 3-on-3 game. I'm like, man, they're doing a good job creating a 3-on-3 basketball league that everybody could watch. That makes Ice Cube's Big Three like a joke. I mean, it's not
Yeah.
a joke, but seeing
Yeah, yeah.
Unrivaled growth and viewership on the TNT sports networks, this is something that you can enjoy because it just showed that the WNBA, even during the off season, they're not really in the off season.
Yeah, you just made a lot of really good points there. And I totally agree with everything that you're saying. The Unrivaled league has really just taken us all by storm. And I think it's the really innovative way that they're approaching it, as well as taking advantage of influencer marketing, right? When you pull the right people in and you're offering something exciting and new to fans, you're going to capture attention and an audience. And obviously through the numbers, we can see that. You also had mentioned Serena Williams and Sabrina making their investments. The other powerful thing that I would mention is for female athletes and for females who have followings and who have extra capital, becoming an owner is a game changer. And that's something that I want young women to really understand and be able to capitalize on is, don't just spend your money. Don't just be an ambassador for another brand. Those things can get you to a certain point. But when you get to a certain point, creating ownership is really where it's at to create that long-term, growth and really to create generational wealth. You need ownership. And I love to see these women setting the example, such as Serena, as well as getting in on the action early, like Sabrina. They are creating a playbook for other young women and young female athletes coming up behind them that will completely change the game because as these female athletes become hopefully, billionaires and multimillionaires, and they're investing in women's sports and they're investing in women's athletes. They are, just going to change the whole dynamic of women's sports being a charity and instead creating these businesses that actually create and generate the types of revenue and fan engagement that rival the men's side. And it's really exciting to see and be a part of it. And I'm so glad to see these, leaders, female athletes who have, Serena transcended sport at this point. Serena is Serena, consistently looking to give back to other women coming up, whether it's business women and business entrepreneurs in the media space, in other athletes and investing in teams. It's just so exciting that, they are caring enough to create the change that's necessary for future generations.
Yep, future generations indeed. And you know what? I see a lot of future generations in certain schools that I went to, or certain schools I'm going to right now that I've already kind of talked about off the air. Like all the women athletes I see around me right now, and all the people that are like looking to make an impact in the media space. And that's something that you have to admire because eventually, well, they're not doing on their talents. They're doing public speaking at events. They're giving back to the communities.
Yeah. Yeah, the giving back piece is so important. When I talk about young fans wanting a lifestyle experience, the other thing that's different about young fans is that they care more about the world around them. They want to contribute to a better future in so many ways, whether it comes to diversity, equity, and inclusion, gender parity, racial parity, caring about the environment, caring about, sustainability. So these are all things that are very new in the sports industry and that young fans are bringing to the industry. So when you see, and it just so happens that, female athletes are, and women in general have always been these visible forces talking about changes that need to happen, right? We had the Me Too movement. We have, Simone Biles talking about mental health. We have Serena Williams talking about being a mom and what that's like as an athlete. So women are okay to be more vulnerable than men. Oftentimes it's just, the difference between men are from Mars, are from Venus. So women are just naturally poised to engage with young fans because of how naturally they share their lives and they share their concerns and they share their love of the things around them and, wanting to create change and being vocal about creating that change where, in the past, I think men have been conditioned not to show emotion, keep your head down and do your job and just, get everything done, even though you might feel a certain way about mental health or about gender parity or about racism in sport, et cetera, et cetera. You've been conditioned not to share that, publicly for good reason, because oftentimes there's a lot of backlash. Before things change, they have to get a lot worse. And usually the people bringing these things to attention are attacked in the media, are attacked by fans, but then eventually it comes full circle and people realize, hey, what they were saying is true and we need to create change here. So I see that female athletes are so well poised to take advantage of the way young fans want to experience sports today, because a big part of that is caring about the world around them.
Exactly. And to add on to what you're saying, there was a time during the pandemic where you had women that were willing to walk away from the game to focus on social justice, or to be more specific, as I recently learned, there being celebrity humanitarians. The people, yeah, they're the type of people that are actually doing stuff for the community, giving back, because they see those worlds around them and they want to show that they're more than just people that are playing basketball. They're social justice advocates and humanitarians to many different people in the population.
Absolutely. I remember, earlier in my career when celebrities would speak out on issues that mattered to them, there would always be a lot of backlash, and people would say, just stick to doing your job, just stick to acting or stick to playing your sport. We don't care what you think about, the issues in the world. And I really believe that people do want to hear from celebrities and athletes, and they want them to take a stand on issues that matter to them. And that's been proven over and over again. So the fact that athletes are being vocal, are leveraging not only the reach, but the influence and the power that they have to influence young people today. And they're taking it more seriously by giving back, by sharing their voice, by taking a stand on issues that matter to them. And it's creating a dynamic where, as I say, young people do also care about those issues, and they want to know that they have support from the people that have the platforms and the influence to create that change. So together, and especially leveraging social media, we can find like-minded people and we can gather like-minded people to create a movement more easily. It's really good to see the athletes stepping up. And even as far as, male athletes, there were plenty of NBA athletes and men who were wearing the Everyone Watches Women's Sports t-shirt. And with my ICNC campaign, there are plenty of men who are stepping up and wearing my t-shirt and promoting it, showing up to my party and getting the message out there. So we have to work together, whether it's an issue that affects you personally or not. If it's an issue that you feel is something that should be changed, be a part of it, right? And that's what I love about the world that we're living in today. It's not perfect, but we have a lot of people coming together, men and women, to create the change that we all want to see in the world.
Exactly. And you talking about coming together. I know is that there is a together, that the brand Together is actually creating Everybody Watch Women's Sports t-shirt campaign, because that is literally, and I think it's good because that's literally showcasing the people that watch women's sports. They're more than what you know already.
Exactly. And that campaign did so well. They generated $3 million of sales in 7 months. So it just goes to show you people are interested in supporting movements like that, and they want to get the message out there. And a t-shirt is a really smart way to do that.
Mm-hmm. Yep, a very smart way to do it. Now, we talk, as you continue to talk about the growth of women in sports, and obviously, is that women's college basketball is going on. When you see athletes like a Juju Watkins or Lauren Best or Paige Beckers putting in work on and off the court, like what can people learn from their movements in the sports industry? Not just playing basketball, put up numbers, but the type of engagement that they give into the fans.
Yeah, again, this is really about storytelling, and it's what I do. The stories have to be there. Fans want more than just what's happening on the court, as you're saying, putting up numbers. That's one element of it that could get fans excited. But more often than not, the thing that really gets fans excited is the storytelling around it, sharing your personal lives, giving an inside look into what's happening in someone's world, whether that's their personal life, they're showcasing where they're spending their time on their weekends in the off season, where they're traveling to, who they're spending time with, their fashions, their sneakers, or it's during and around the matches and the season, they go inside the locker room, they see how they interact with the other players on the team. They, give them more than just what you would get in a traditional media website where it's just really kind of about the game. Maybe it's a sit down interview if you're lucky, but that unfiltered and behind the scenes exclusive access is really, I think, what's helping drive a lot of the interest in women's college basketball, because those stories are there. Those women are putting themselves out there on social media, and people find that really fascinating.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And I remember when I was at the Women's Champions Classic, I didn't get to see it when I was there. They had like a little pop-up event of many different women looking to get their face and their hair done through the Shark brand that collaborate with those teams, because it goes to show it's more than just a basketball fan. It's a women's sports movement, because getting their
Exactly.
hair, because women like Ari and Aliyah Funchel, they're getting their hair and makeup done at the Shark pop-up spot.
I love that. Yes, that's exactly it. And that's also my point with the everyone watches women's sports t-shirt. I believe I read a stat that women's sports merchandise is a $4 billion market. The way that women like to experience sport is different. It doesn't mean it's better or worse. It's just different, right? So like you would never have that pop-up shop at a men's event, although I think you could too, because 50%, nearly every sports league and team, nearly 50% of their fans are females. So you probably could even have that pop up at a men's game, and you would see the women going there and using those services. And why not? The same thing with merchandising. Women like to show their fandom buying things as well, which is why you see that number of 4 billion. It's a $4 billion market, and it's untapped currently. So there are so many opportunities that different brands and teams and leagues could take advantage of in terms of recognizing that half of their fans are female, and also that there's this whole, generation of people who watch women's sports and who love women's sports, and that represents a big opportunity in and of itself. It's just that you have to think differently about the way that female fans, and by the way, younger fans are experiencing sport. It perhaps is more casual in that they're not diehard fans, just focus on what's happening on the court or the field or the arena. They care about what's happening around them, and that doesn't make them a lesser fan. Perhaps they could even spend more money on the team if the team is coming up with all of these exciting elements in terms of how to, bring the team to life in various lifestyle ways. It's an opportunity for those teams and leagues and brands to make more money from the casual fan than those diehard fans. So I really think that there's still we're just scratching the surface of what's possible in terms of addressing female fandom in both men's sports and women's sports, and addressing women's sports as a whole.
Exactly. And it's that type of mentality why you have so many different media companies willing to create a new partnership for the WNBA. And recently, the WNBA just had signed deals with Amazon and NBC Peacock to televise games on their network and do like a little alternation of WNBA finals. Like, you're not going to get WNBA finals every year on ESPN like you normally would. I mean, they're going to have to exchange certain years with NBC and Amazon Prime. And that's the type of engagement you need for women's sports, because how are people going to get invested if they can only watch on ESPN and ABC or
That's
ESPN
right.
networks as a whole? Oh, you have to branch out. There's some people that can't
Exactly.
afford cable television. You have to
Exactly.
keep branching out. So I get why they do it that way, because if they can't afford cable, just watch on the stream. That's it.
Exactly. I love that. Growth requires access. And this is something that I talk to my clients about a lot because there's always this idea that they want people to pay for the content from the beginning, and it's just not big enough yet. And the strategy has to be flipped, and you have to just give the content away, make it accessible to people everywhere for free. Then, once you have a captive audience, then you can start to monetize that audience. But what always has to come first is to create the audience. And the way that you do that is give it away for free. Bring people into your circle, make them fans. Then you can monetize that in various ways. But they're also, the media landscape is getting so fragmented. And, fans, even fans of sport, various sports, have to pay multiple different streaming services. It's going to become unrealistic. And I think we're living in an environment today where viewership is already declining because most young fans are going to social media to get the highlights and to engage in community and lifestyle there. And so you will find they don't really release the specific numbers, but many of these traditional media companies and the apps that they're releasing, the streaming services that they're releasing, they're not doing well because fans are really making the decision of, unless I'm a diehard fan of this particular sport, why would I pay for all these different streaming services that I need to be a casual fan of multiple different sports teams and leagues? I'll just go on social media. Because social media gives me the content that I want the way that I want it anyway. It's infused with personalities, with athletes, with lifestyle culture, music and fashion, etc. So we're finding that these traditional media companies and the streaming services are going to have to rethink their strategies in terms of giving the content away to fans and finding other ways to monetize.
Exactly. Monetization is very important. And it's also important because you, as somebody that works in public relations, get to promote every single news story that the team is involved in. Which leads me to this one question. As a public relations, why do you think that's important for a teams like at FC Barcelona? And how do you pick the media that you want covering the team?
Yeah, that's a really good question. At first, when I was working in international football, it wasn't easy to get media to be interested in Bayern Munich and Barcelona, et cetera, because these teams are based, thousands of miles away in Europe. They don't have a stadium here in the US. And the news that we generate, the interviews that we provide, were a really good way to get media interested in the story. So, and then over time, over the last 10 years, US has really developed as a soccer nation. It's partly because, a lot of international people live here and they love football. They love European football. It also has to do with the fact that, again, we live in a global society now. So through social media and through the ways in which young fans engage and follow sport. So gaming, FIFA, EA Sports created this FIFA game that, young American boys and girls, yes, young girls too. Gaming is not just for boys. Young boys and girls would play this, EA Sports FIFA game and learn about all the different international football clubs and teams. So much so that it started a movement and it opened up the door to media wanting to cover international football. So, and then we would come and do a lot of these cross collaborations that we talked about. So the teams would come over to the United States in the summer months and we would invite NBA players and NFL players to do like certain cross collaborations, again, attracting media attention because the media that cover the NFL or cover the NBA would now be interested in what these NFL and NBA players are doing with the European football stars. And so using, the tools and the experience that I have in public relations, it's about storytelling. And it's less these days about sharing news in a traditional way of like a press release, but it's more about coming up with really interesting and innovative story ideas that would attract young fans, that will attract media that cover multiple different angles. So you go after entertainment media or media that cover music or media that cover US sports, and you create these opportunities to tell interesting and compelling stories that attract those media and attract their young fans. So that's a lot of what I do now for international brands that are looking to expand in the US market, or even US based brands that are looking to engage with younger and more diverse audiences here in the US. There's a very different formula to how you engage those young fans than, for the 20, 30 years before. And that's a lot of what the knowledge and the experience that I bring to my practice and to the clients that I work with.
Exactly. And when people are actually building media companies as independent journalists like myself, they gotta look at you. They gotta look at your interviews. I mean, it's not enough just to like you have to do like you only have to do like a bunch of interviews with many different athletes and many different media that cover teams like FC Barcelona, just for people that work in space to be like, that's the guy we want covering the team. It's just a matter of being able to squeeze in. We only get like when you have a like if you have 10 or 15 people signing up to do media and you only have credentials and seats to only bring in like 5 or 7,
Right.
that's something that is going to make it tough.
That's exactly it. And I struggle with this a lot with the clients that I work with in terms of, the amount of overwhelming requests that they receive. Just for example, with FC Barcelona, they're a global brand. So they have 500 million followers around the world. There's media in Asia, in the Middle East, in Latin America, in the United States, in Europe, of course. They all want access to the team and the players to interview them. But there's only so much that they could possibly provide. And so it's a matter of obviously your rights holders always come first. So the people that already pay for the matches and, they're airing the matches, they always are guaranteed access. And then how many more media could you possibly give an interview to when you're a global brand and people all around the world want to talk to you? So, I understand why they have to limit that access, but in limiting the access, it also limits, the opportunities too. And so it's always about trying to find that balance.
Exactly. I mean, shoot, and this comes from somebody that I've been to WNBA college basketball and high school events as credentialed media, and even coming up my previous experience with the WNBA WNBA credential media. After that, I still end up running into some years where I'm one of like literally half of the people that sign up for credentials to cover the WNBA drafts and the finals that don't get the same access you have a year ago because the growth is so because they have to prioritize and make tough decisions based on the type of the structure of the event. Who they want coming in. Yeah, you can show interest. Yeah, you can sign up. Yeah, you can do all the interviews you want. But if they're very selective who they want bringing in based on a person's personality when they're interviewing people and what they're looking for and why they're interviewing the players, that comes a factor for people that work in the public relations.
Exactly. Yeah, we make the decisions, of course. We have to decide. It's not always easy to make those decisions because there could be some very good people that tell very interesting stories. But again, you have so many limited spots. And when you're a professional team, keep in mind the coaches, even though we make the decisions, it's the coaches and the coaching staff that say, I don't want my players distracted doing so many interviews. I need my players focused on training, on the games. They only really release the players to do 1 or 2 interviews and that's it. So, it's then the public relations responsibility to figure out who do you give those 1 or 2 to, because that's all the coach will allow. And at the end of the day, when you work in sports, you have to realize that the performance is always what's going to be most important and always what's going to drive what we can do on the business side. And I can't tell you how many times coaches have said, I'm pulling this event, I'm pulling this interview, I need this player focused. And that's just it. They come first and they
And there were
have
recent
priority.
college basketball games where a team pulls up an upset against the INC and the coaches have to say, do not storm the court.
Yeah.
Because the SEC teams they have to pay fines every time fans storm the court. And fans have been storming the court for over upset victories for years.
Yeah.
And some of the coaches, even Dale Gates was like, "Do not storm the court. Do not rush the court. We need the money for NIL. It's not going to help if we have to pay fines every time fans storm the court."
Exactly, exactly. It's really sports is driven by the coaches, and the entire business is run around the coach. So whatever he or she says really is the golden rule, and everyone has to follow that because. And I'm sure you understand why, working in sport yourself, if the team, it's always the responsibility of the coach, whether the team wins or loses, it doesn't matter. And when you have that sort of responsibility on your shoulders, that if the team loses, it's my fault, you make sure the environment around the team is as pristine as possible to help make sure that they do win.
Hmm. Exactly. It's all about making a connection at the end of the day, and it's also about like I mentioned earlier, what the PR team and the coach want covering your team. And
Exactly.
I've
Yeah,
had
they
a lot of
really,
moments, and I've had a lot of moments where I don't get to cover everything that the people I interviewed or work with cover, but this is how it is,
yeah.
and
And also, you're going to develop and grow. So while that might happen now, in 5 years from now, everything takes decades. And that's difficult for people to realize is, as I said, I've been doing this for 20 years, and almost everyone who you see who's successful has been doing it for a decade plus. And that sort of time, I think people are starting to realize it's not just an overnight thing. Like you'll get there if you keep working at it. Like I see you working at it now, you will get to that point, but sometimes it takes time. The other option is, you could work for a more traditional media outlet to get that access, and that could help build your career early on too. There are two roads that you could always take. And actually, I had another media personality, an influencer, a content creator into my class at NYU a couple of weeks ago. And he talked about getting, starting as a content creator for himself and then not getting the access that he needed all the time or that he wanted all the time. So then he decided to work full time for a traditional media company. And through that, the last few years, he's gotten all the access that he wanted. And now he has those relationships in place that he can use for his own now, development of his own media brand. So something to think about in terms of getting the right access and getting the right connections around you in certain moments of your career as you're building and developing.
exactly. And I just got to ask this one question because for anybody that's like willing to work in public relations, what advice do you have for them? And that goes out to your students as a gender professor at NYU.
Thank you. Thank you. So, the main advice I would say, if you want to be a really good public relations professional today, you have to understand how the industry works. And traditional media is no longer the main route to getting your stories out there. So you have to understand how to create compelling stories for various audiences, whether that's for business audiences or for fans or consumers of all different types of products and services. So just being a creative person who can develop stories that will resonate with audiences, that's first and foremost. And then in terms of the distribution of those stories, there are many different ways that you can get it out there. There's the traditional media, but what's become more and more important is owned media. So your social media channels, your blogs, all the places in which you own and control your storytelling. And it requires different elements and different ingredients. So again, it goes back to the storytelling element. How do you engage and create this interest? And then how do you get the story out there in the many different places that you can? And then lastly is being really good with developing relationships, because that has to be a key part of who you are naturally. Public relations is, I mean, it's in the name, public relations. You have to relate to people. You have to be able to relate to audiences, to relate to the media, to relate to your clients, and maintaining good relationships and being someone who cares about relationships is crucial to the whole process of being a public relations professional as well.
Exactly. And if the public relations tell you that's it, no more interviews, you gotta just learn to go with the flow.
Exactly. Still thank them, still stay in touch with them, and wait for that right moment, because I can tell you in those instances when they have to say no, they feel terrible about it. And if you show up with kindness and respect in return, they'll remember that and they'll try to fit you in a future date.
Hmm. Exactly. And that's all that matters. All right. Well, thank you for stopping by, Sabrina. I'm looking forward to continue the conversation at another time. And I really love that you actually advocated for women in sports, like from you're working through at FC Barcelona to teach the next generation at NYU to now starting your own business with Gabby. This is how you get invested in women in sports.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me, for listening to my story and bringing it to your audience. And I really look forward to staying in touch with you. You're killing it, and you're only just gonna skyrocket from here. I could see it in you. You're a star. Thank you, Rafiq.
Well, yeah. And I got everything to prove right over there.
Excellent. And I have to get you a t-shirt, so I'll follow up with you after the show for that.
All right, no problem. For Rafiq,
Thank
it
you.
was on Sabrina C. We'll see you next time.
See you next time. Bye. Take care.